Hello, lovely people of the interwebs. Ignore my crazy hair and stuff, I just got out of the shower. But anyway, I wanted to bring up a point today that I think is important and I think more people should know. And it's kind of an analogy that I'm going to make to help you understand a little bit about government. Even though I don't know that much about government, I think I have a sense of some things. So, I used to be a teacher. I taught for almost 10 years in a classroom. I had to learn how to manage that classroom. I had to learn what kind of classroom rules I was going to make. What were the rules of the school? And then in my specific classroom, what were my rules in addition to that? What were my expectations? And I had to make it a fair environment for every child. I had to make sure that nobody felt like they were being, treated any differently, and that everybody had the chance at the same type of success in my classroom, no matter who they were. And I taught actually a lot of special education students. That was my favorite. My collaborative classes were the best, and we had the most fun in those classes. But moving on from that, why is classroom management kind of like running a government? Well, in the United States, at least, we have this concept of the individual and then the federal, like the country, and then the state. So you're an individual within a community, which is the state or your classroom, okay? And you're also part of a larger community, which is the United States as a whole. And a student is part of the school community that they're in. The school is run by principals and vice principals. They all meet in committees and come up with these school policies and laws based on the state education board and what the expectations are there. And then what that individual school's expectations are for its students. And expectations for students are like the laws of school. So when the school comes up with these, they distribute these to the teachers. The teachers have to follow these policies and rules. But the teachers also, like states, for instance, are able to make their own specific laws that identify specific things that that community, or that area, or that state may need or may need assistance with. And that helps to make sure that we aren't wasting resources on things that maybe New York doesn't need this type of program. They need help with this. Okay, so we're not going to spend extra money in the government on this program that we're not going to use at all this year. The thing that we need to help with is this. So it's about prioritizing things. It doesn't mean that we can never do a program like that again. I think in the education field, at least, it's like, okay, well, we're going to do it this way this year, but we could try it another way another year. And that's also, I feel like being a teacher and classroom management and leadership is kind of like a science experiment too, because you have to understand how to get people to respect you and follow the rules. You have to do that by presenting yourself in a particular way, in a way that people will respect you, and you have to treat people the way that you want to be treated. So it kind of goes both ways. And I think people need to understand that, and people need to understand that we can have a government that's smaller and that has maybe more concise general laws and rules based off of, what we already have. And then the states get to further decide. So think about my suggestions. Think about those executive actions. Some of the programs that were being cut out, people were very upset about. And let's just say, for example, that we had a branch of that program in every single state. Now, not every single state is going to need to use any resources from that program every year. They might not. And that money is either spent or it goes to waste. Most of the time, people are encouraged to spend it because there's a time limit on money and funds, especially in school systems, and I assume also in the government. And so they have to spend that money then. They can't get that money later. And so then what that does is they've spent money that could have been used for something else, like helping, a community after a disaster or something like that. And instead, like, that money. So it's not about silencing anyone. It's not about, telling people they can't do specific things. Communities can still, and states can still have organizations and communities that care about those types of issues and that go around and volunteer and help people and help people become successful in this country. There are ways to do that, and there are fair ways to do that. And I think that was probably, I'm hoping that that's the intended purpose. It's not, and I think a lot of times we see things and go, oh my God, okay, wait. We're gonna jump to this right now. But I find myself having moments where I do jump to conclusions, but then I go, okay, wait a second, hold on. I need to think about this logically, because for every argument that you make or everything that upsets you about something that's happening, you need to think about what the counter argument to that is. And when you think about the counter argument to it, does your point still hold up, and why? Okay, so yeah, I don't know. Those are just my my thinking thoughts today. But like I said, I think classroom management and running a government are very similar. And I think the goal and the purpose is to basically make it so that the people can be more involved in their government. So instead of going, oh, the federal government's cutting everything out, have you noticed that states and state lawmakers are now like looking at a bunch of issues that have been happening in their communities, and now they're going, okay, well, we need to fix this, or we need to do this. So it kind of was abrupt, but it kicked all of these local communities, and it kicked them in the pants to say, hey, we should be having a more interactive government where local officials and people in the community are all kind of talking about, collaborating, and thinking about what's really going to be beneficial. And so that, I think, is the goal. The goal is to be a part of a larger community, but also be a part of a smaller community that cares about your individual needs. And the government, the federal government, is responsible for protecting the people and making sure that the people, have everything they need, rightfully so, to be a citizen of the United States. Have every right that they need to do that. And then the state government's job is to ensure that the people in the communities are being taken care of, and that the people feel heard, that the people are able to work and be successful in their communities. And that also is up to nonprofit organizations and community work that people do as well. Because that kind of stuff, like, okay, everybody has to have a job. I get that. But there's certain things that work better in the nonprofit realm and kind of separated from government, because that way you don't have bias, and you, at least with the government, and you don't feel like they're doing something they shouldn't be doing. If it's an individual organization, then that organization's more accountable to what's happened. And I don't know, these are just some thinking thoughts. So with all that being said, I don't really know what's happening. I'm trying to make sense of things, and I'm also trying to remain calm and like do what I need to do. And that's why I said, like, we should try not to be so rigid about the way we're looking at this, because that's the reason that they were making these changes, is because people had become too rigid and centered on, like, focused on one thing instead of focusing on the big picture of, you know, what are the most pressing issues of the country. What's the priority number one? Yes, we want to respect each other. Yes, we want to lift each other up. Yes, we want to, you know, teach children about, you know, the civil rights movement and Black history. Sure, that's part of American history. We want to have those discussions, but we also need to understand, when you're looking at a government, and if you've never managed a business or a classroom or had any kind of leadership position, then you just are not going to understand. But it's a lot of pressure.